So yesterday I was showing you that we started the wood stove up, how to set it up, how to put the logs in, all that stuff. Last night it got pretty chilly. It got down to 27 degrees outside, and inside it got down to 54 degrees. But that's okay, because the only reason I worry about the temperature in the house is so our water doesn't freeze. So since it didn't get so miserably cold that our water was going to freeze, I just went ahead and let it get down to the 50s. Normally, I will try to keep the temperature in the house in the 60s. Now, I started the wood stove before I went to bed, but I didn't necessarily need to do that. I could have had Carolyn start it before she went to bed. She said she went to bed at midnight last night. I went to bed at 8:30. So we'd have gotten an extra 4 hours. If she would have started it, the house would have never gotten below to 60 degrees. So the water temperature, I keep a little remote control thermometer in the water tank housing. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And it got down to 48 degrees inside the housing. Now, you got to remember that the water itself maintains temperature in there quite well. You could get down below freezing for days before you had to worry about that temperature in that box dropping down. Now, one thing that everybody is so concerned about is the IBC tank itself, the tank of water, 250 gallons, freezing. Never had a problem with it freezing. What will freeze is the water pump, the plumbing, all that stuff. I have a method of trying to keep that warm that I'll talk about in just a minute. Now, last year we got down to -4 degrees before that pump froze. It was the best year we had with the temperature. I think we've been through 3 winters, so this will be our 4th winter, I guess. So the first winter we froze, but we just moved in the house. The tank wasn't really set up that well. And then the next year, it didn't get that cold. And then the year after that, -4, and we did a fantastic. What we have to consider is how to keep everything from freezing. So I want to talk about the well just for a minute. This is not only a primary source of water, but it's our backup source of water. The tank, I don't know how you want to really look at this. It doesn't matter. But in the end, it's impossible for us not to have water in the wintertime. No matter what freezes, we've got it solved. So I may be going out of order a little bit here. So you can see that we have this stanchion. That's called a well liner. The well liner goes all the way down to the length of the well casing, which is a metal pipe that goes the diameter of the well. The well casing's cracked, so you put a well liner in there to keep that water from and dirt and everything collapsing into the well. It's an old well, so I had to repair it, is my point. So then you'll see that I have a black pipe with a little nozzle on it. That goes all the way down to the well pump. The well pump is in the water, sucking the water up, or pushing the water up. Well, that pipe, that black pipe, has a hole probably about the size of my pinky, about 70 feet down. So every time I start the well, I gotta wait several seconds. I would say maybe 20 seconds. I can walk from turning it on down there at the shed. Of course, I run it off solar now. And I can walk all the way up here before water will start shooting out. So it's a good little trip for that water to have to travel up that 70 feet. What happens is when I shut the well pump off, that water starts to drain back down through that hole. Now the hole isn't so big that I can't get any water out of here. I actually do pretty good. The pump can pump 15 gallons per minute. It coming out of the nozzle, I probably get about 12 gallons a minute because I got that hole in there. It's just shooting water out. When I shut the pump off, all that water drains back down. So there is no water in that pipe for the first 70 feet, from here down, 70 feet. After 70 feet, then there's water in it. So it cannot freeze. This is always my solution. No matter what happens, I have water. Now, you know me, if you've been with me any length of time, when we were nomads, water was so hard to find. And now that I have it, I just treasure it so much. So water is life to me. Now, normally in the summertime, I have a white hose that comes out of this, an RV hose. I also have a Y splitter that comes out of it. So the first thing is a little Y splitter. One goes to the hose, the other one just shoots out into these buckets. And the reason I do that is when I'm done using the hose, I don't want all that water in the hose being sucked back in. So I switch it over. So I got one with the hose, one just shooting out into the buckets here. After I fill my tank with this hose, I switch it over so now it's just shooting out. That way when I shut off the water, it sucks through that one because the water back down. At the end of the water hose, I have 3 filters. I have a sediment filter and 2 charcoal filters. Now they're just house filters, that's all they are. You can find them at Walmart. Go over to the little plumbing section, you'll find these little blue canisters. I think they're still blue, and you can put a filter inside that. Well, that's all I have. So I've got that tied into my hoses. So I got a hose comes out into those filters, and I got another hose coming out of those filters into the tank. Well, those filters are dirty. So you don't want that water being sucked back through the filters down into the well and contaminating your well. Now, when I fill the water tank, it's insulated. So I have this box that wraps around the water tank. And then I have the styrofoam that keeps it insulated. I have read several comments in the last few days. I can't even remember what the video was about. I don't remember. But a lot of people seem to think, oh, canning. I kept saying I didn't want my jars to freeze, my canned goods. A lot of people seem to think that if you just wrap insulation around something, that it's going to stay warm. Like the insulation produces heat. It doesn't produce heat. If you had your walls insulated and you went on that theory, then you wouldn't need a heater in your house. The only thing the insulation does, it works like a blanket. It holds the heat in that you're making. So your body's producing heat when you have a blanket, and the only thing the blanket is doing is holding that heat in for a little bit longer. So you still have to heat this. If you insulate anything, you have to heat it. I've heard people say, just close in the well house and insulate it and it'll stay warm. No, I've lived in Missouri my whole life. And anytime I see above ground well, I can guarantee you in the wintertime, somebody's got a light bulb in there trying to keep the thing warm with insulation. The light bulb produces the heat. So I still have to keep heat into this. Well, I have 2 heat sources on this. The first one, I don't think a lot of people really think about. It's the water itself. When it comes out of the well, it comes out about 60 degrees, 58 to 60 degrees. Well, when it's below freezing, that means the water temperature is now hotter than the air temperature. That much water takes a long time to cool off. So if I fill it every day or whatever, I'm constantly putting hotter water in it. Eventually, the cold is going to overcome what I can heat it up with. So if I know it's going to get really cold, down into the negatives, a few days before it actually happens, then what I do is I don't fill this up for a while, a week or whatever it is. I know whenever I find out. So it's drained down enough that when I fill it, I'm putting a lot of hot water in there, 60 degree water in there. So let's say the water temperature was at 30 degrees, and then I put 60 degrees, half and half. You figure that's going to bring it up to about, I don't know, 45 degrees inside the box. Well, that's not enough. I mean, depending on how long it's going to stay cold, eventually it's going to get cold again. So what I do is I have ventilation. So inside the house, above the shower, right here is the shower. I have ventilation on top of the shower. And that ventilation runs in behind the shower, down this wall, and into this box. Now, all the plumbing that goes into the house, from the water pump, well, all the way from the tank. So you got the plumbing that takes the suction from the tank, you got the water pump, and then the piping and the hose that goes into the house. All that is inside the ventilation out here. So as the heat comes down, it's keeping all that plumbing warm. Now, I put a fan at the end of the ventilation up there. So it's pushing that air from inside the house out here. Right across the other side of the house from the shower is the wood stove. So when the wood stove gets up to, well, up there by the ceiling, it can get up there at 100 degrees or so. So it's bringing in that 100 degree temperature. By the time it comes out here, it's about 45 degrees. No matter how much I argue to this, somebody's gonna say you should do this, you should do that. I've thought of everything, I've tried everything. This seems to work the best. At some point, I just have to recognize it's gonna freeze. there's just not much I can do about it other than putting the tank in the house, and then I don't even have any place to live. So what I can do, if I need water in the wintertime, I can still go over to the well. Obviously, I can fill buckets and bring it into the house, and we can warm it up on the wood stove or whatever, so we can have hot water to wash our hair and take sponge baths. Or I can take a hose and I can hook it up to the well here, because the well hasn't frozen. It's not going to freeze. So I hook it up to the well. I run that hose through the window. I would actually take it through the side window here over here. That hose will hook into our on-demand water heater. So all I'm doing is disconnecting the RV pump inside this box, taking the hose that comes from the RV pump, and then just hooking up the well. And then I go down, I can start up the well pump off the solar panels. Water goes straight into the hot water heater, and we can run hot water indefinitely, really. Now, the only downside is you can't shut off the water inside. It would have to run until I walked outside and shut off the solar panels again, shut off the well from down there. So it's not a huge issue. The last few years, what I used to do is I used to take this whole assembly, the hose and the filters, everything, I would coil it up and I would put it in the side of this box here. The problem is when these hoses get cold and they move around that much all winter long, because I try to fill it 2 or 3 times, well, used to. Now I fill the tank every day. These hoses get brittle and they break on you. So I'm changing my methods a little bit. I've decided what I'll do is take the filters off of the hoses and just put the filters in the house. They don't take up a lot of room. And then I can just drain the water out of the hoses. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. I just now thought of it this year, this summer. Well, this morning I tried it. Well, last night I took the hoses off because I knew it was going to freeze today. And one of the hoses was still frozen. So it didn't drain for some reason. So now I know that I just got to blow the water out to make sure there's no water in it. But it only took a second for it to thaw out. Now maybe half hour. I took one of the hoses, that one that froze, into that shower, let it thaw out. So this is a little bit better setup. Of course, I got to hook the filters up each time I come out here to put water in the tank. And people are going to complain, oh, you just do so much work. There's just unnecessary work. It's much easier. Why don't you just hook up the grid? It's so much easier. Well, I don't think having a job and going to paying for all that stuff is easier. So that's just, one opinion. Now, one of the things that we considered is we have this hose here that runs down to the camper. So Carolyn uses the camper to cook in. We know we're not going to be able to keep this hose warm. We've decided that we're not even going to try. We could bury the hose, we could run plumbing down here, and we just decided it's not worth it to spend that much time and effort, money, rigging it up so we have water running down there. During the summer, it's pretty nice. It comes right out of that tank. So we have one of those Y splitters again. One goes into the house, one goes into the camper. Well, this is going to freeze, but I don't necessarily want to shut the water off so the camper never has water. On days that it's more mild, we can still do dishes down there. There's no reason to have to do dishes up here every day throughout the winter because we shut the water off. So if you look at this hose, it's one of those stretchy hoses. As it fills up, it expands and it shrinks up when you empty the water out of it. So if it freezes, the hose itself will expand so it will never break the hose. That was kind of thawed out a little bit before we ran down here. Now the downside of that hose is there is chemicals in it. Now I know somebody's going to say, I drink out of those hoses all the time when I was a kid. Nothing ever happened to me. Well, first of all, a lot of people have cancer, so we got to think about that. But secondly, you're not drinking out of it all the time when you're a kid. You drink out of it once or twice a summer. These white hoses are RV hoses, and they don't transfer those chemicals that are in all these hoses. So we can't drink water from the camper. Now, when we drink water, all our water goes through the Berkey water filtration system. When we were nomads, we didn't have an RV hose. We just had a regular green hose. Well, after the camper fire and all that, we decided to get one of these, but The Berkey, you would have to rinse out, you have to clean it and prime it and all that stuff. Well, I primed it with that green hose one time, and you could taste those chemicals from that hose until that water washed out. So it is pretty nasty, and there's no reason to drink nasty water if you don't have to. Carolyn's laundry. So she comes out here and does laundry in the summertime. But in the wintertime, she just grabs a bucket and a plunger. She sits in there. And the nice thing is in the wintertime, she gets hot water because she just takes it right from a water heater. Whereas in the summertime, it's just whatever temperature the water is. So we've kind of shut everything down for the summer and now doing our winter operation. You'll click this up next box to take you to a video where I was talking about that wood stove. So I hope I can inspire you to make the transition from season to season when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.